Hello and welcome back for another jam-packed episode of the IBS Freedom Podcast. I am joined by my lovely co-host, Miss Amy Hollenkamp, RD.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. And I warn you now, if Amy is your favorite co-host and I'm just the runner-up, you're going to get sick of hearing my voice today because today is a Nikki heavy episode because I'm teaching y'all about Nervines, baby. The much anticipated Nervine and adaptogen twofer is coming your way, and we're going to have a special episode too. You'll see what it is. But there's going to be a special episode smack dab in between these episodes. This is going to be the threefer of strategies of what you can use for stress and anxiety and mental health. And some of my all-time favorite herbs for this purpose are Nervines and adaptogens. So without further ado, Amy, would you like to weigh in or shall I just rock your mind?
Well, I'm very excited about learning more from you on Nervines. I feel like just being your podcast co-host, I've already learned from you more than I knew before about Nervine, so I'm just excited to deep dive and explore your wonderful knowledge base on Nervine herbs. And again, I could share some of the experiences I've had with Nervines as of late too. Yeah. So it should be a fun episode.
Maybe like as we talk about each herb, you could certainly add in like your experience using them.
Yeah.
Either clinically or personally or anything that you might want to throw in. Because I will say two things, even though Amy just like built me up to be so wonderful. A, I have also likewise learned so much from you being your co-host. I mean, like, I think I knew a fair whack about nutrition starting off, but I am so much more deeply in tune with making sure that people are nutrient replete and nourished and watching out, having really high alert for disordered eating patterns and making sure that people have a good relationship with their food. So right back at you, girlfriend. Like if I've taught you anything about herbs, you have taught me a lot about nutrition too.
This is just a love fest.
It is.
This is a Nikki Amy love fest.
We're just crushing on each other. That should be should be like the segment of the YouTube video should just be called Nikki Amy Love Fest.
Right. Exactly.
But similarly, I will preface this conversation by saying I'm not like a certified herbalist yet. I am working toward becoming a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild, but I have not yet gotten to that point. And I will confess also, I think the clinical use of the herbs I'm getting pretty good with. The energetics, which we're going to get into in a minute, I'm less savvy with. I'm moderately savvy, I should say. And like, if you were to ask me what the active compounds or the most active compounds were in a plant, I do not know that. And if you were to ask me anything about like the plant species or the ethnobotany of it, or like the, like identify this plant in the woods. No, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I can identify a couple of things here and there, but I'm not real good with like the botany of it quite yet. So keep that in mind. I'm not technically an herbalist yet, although that is an accolade I will be hoping to add in 2022. But without further ado, perhaps the first question on some of your all minds are, what the heck's a Nervine? And why should I care about a Nervine, right?
Yes.
This should have been like the first minute of the podcast, but we had to get the love fest out of the way first.
Right.
And conveniently, I've got some notes from an herbalist who I respect very much. And the way that he defined it, I thought was useful. Because really, like, you could zoom out and you could say that a lot of things are Nervines, or you could be very narrow in your definition. Same thing when we talk about adaptogens. Some herbalists have very narrow kind of definition of what an adaptogen is, and some people expand it to include other herbs. But generally, a Nervine is an herb that gently tonifies or nourishes the nervous system. And if you think about all of our conversations about the vagus nerve and the gut-brain axis and the parasympathetic nervous system, like, I want you to especially think of that part of your nervous system, although these herbs oftentimes have effect in a wide variety of neurons. But generally, they're going to be tonifying or nourishing for the nervous system, and they're going to help promote balance or proper function of the nervous system. So that's what you can think of with a Nervine. So it's kind of a little bit analogous to the world of adaptogens when we get to that, where we think of how they modulate and how they balance and normalize stress chemistry. Typically with adaptogens, to be truly an adaptogen, usually it's said that the herb is not going to be intrinsically stimulating of your stress chemistry, and it's not going to be suppressive of your stress chemistry. It's going to be normalizing. So similarly, I think with Nervines, it's not necessarily that a lot of these are like aggressively putting the damper on your nervous system, or they're like promoting the activity like caffeine. It's not like that. It's going to be a balancing or a modulating effect most of the time. But there are some Nervines that are a little bit more sedative or a little bit more relaxing. And they can have different qualities, certainly. So with that being said, just keep that in mind, is that a Nervine is going to be balancing or tonifying or nourishing for the nervous system in some way, shape, or form. Now let me ask you this. No, I'm not going to. I changed my mind.
Oh gosh. Okay.
I was going to pose the question of like, should we go in alphabetical order? Because I have some notes prepped for today. I'm just going to go in order alphabetically from what I prepared, because that way I know I'm not going to leave anybody out. And I might skip over some of the herbs that I don't use quite as much if I don't go in order of my notes. So to be just a little bit cheesy, I am going to be referring to a couple of my notes here.
Right.
The first one we're going to start with is actually not one that a lot of people know about, I think. Outside, again, if you're an herbalist, you probably know this herb very well. But even amongst like functional medicine, or certainly an audience of normal people, I don't think a lot of you probably know this herb, and that's blue vervaine. Have you heard of this herb, Amy?
I feel like, have we talked about it before in regard to like menopause? Is this...
Maybe. We might have.
I feel like I remember me asking a question about a client who was struggling with hot flashes.
Yeah.
And I feel like we talked about this. So that's all I know about blue vervaine, is that it potentially could help with hot flashes. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I've used blue vervaine for hot flashes. It is a little bit cooling, like on the kind of energetic spectrum, it's a little bit cooling. So that makes sense, and it's a bit drying. The things that I would say, and I'll kind of give you like the quick and dirty cliff notes on a lot of these, because people are just listening to this thinking, all right, lady, what herbs should I take? Blue vervaine is really good for people who are stressed and also afraid. So like you could be stressed, and that stress can manifest in your body and in your mind a lot of different ways, right? Like, and we're going to get to this with other herbs. When you're stressed, there are some people who get a lot of mind chatter of like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. What did I do? I have 3 things to do tomorrow. Did I fill that out? Did I send that email? I should send that email tomorrow. I should send that on the 31st. Or like the hypercritical version of that of like, you suck. I can't believe you said that. She hates you. I can't believe that. She's thinking about what you said all day long.
Right.
So like, but there's variations of mind chatter. Some people don't really get the mind chatter. Some people, when they're stressed, they get really tense. Like every muscle in their body locks up and clenches, and their jaw clenches, and their fists clench, and their gut clenches. That's one manifestation. Some people, when they get really stressed, they'll get headaches. Some people will get like menstrual cycle abnormalities, obviously if they're menstruating. So it's like, we can talk about herbs that are good for stress, which honestly, that's what the whole episode is about. But it's herbs that are good for stress of a certain variety, and that's how you can tailor this a little bit more to the individual. So blue vervaine is really good for people who are stressed and afraid. Like they're anxious, they're thinking about the future, they're worried about the outcomes, they're worried about what's going to happen in the future, they're thinking and they're overanalyzing the crap out of everything. And also it's good for people who are really tense. I think that's kind of a secondary thing. I think more of the fear thing with blue vervaine. And it combines well with other herbs for like menstrual or menopausal related stress. So sometimes I'll combine it with like motherwort, for example, which is another one that we're going to get to. And both of those seem to have some affinity for the female reproductive system in some way. So that's what
I just had a quick question. When you say like energetics being cooling and like describe like what do you mean by energetic?
Yeah. So the easiest way to describe it is to give you 2 really like polarizing examples.
Okay.
If you were to drink peppermint tea, what's the sensation that you would feel?
Cooling.
If you were to drink ginger tea,
oh yeah,
even if it's room temperature, you would feel it heat. Or
Okay.
cayenne or turmeric is hot. So there's going to be a spectrum for all of the herbs where there's going to be herbs that are very, very cooling, like peppermint. Anything in the mint family is generally going to be cooling. And then there are going to be herbs like cayenne or ginger or turmeric that are really warming. And then there's going to be a spectrum in between where it's a little bit less clear, the warming or cooling thing. And then you can have a warm or cool kind of body temperament. Like I'm cold all the time, all day, every day.
Right.
So naturally, funny enough, all my life, I've never liked mint. I don't even use mint toothpaste. I use like a ginger cardamom toothpaste because I hate mint because it makes me feel cold and I'm already cold. So I don't want that. So it's kind of interesting how people kind of gravitate to things naturally. But similarly, if you take a person like me who's always cold, you could look at me and say, all right, if we have a choice between a warming and a cooling herb, we're probably going to be better off going for the warm herb if you have a choice between the two. Or if you can also have like warm or cool states of an individual tissue, and you could target herbs maybe based on the tissue as well. But basically that's what I'm talking about. So blue vervaine is a little bit cooling. It's not as cooling as something like peppermint, but maybe it would be slightly better suited for somebody who tends to run a bit warm. So like in the case of hot flashes, that would be a good example of that.
Right. That makes total sense. I just wanted to make sure I was clear and everyone else was clear on what you're describing as energetics.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that because I think it's easy to get lost in the jargon and assume that people like intuitively know something.
Right.
So I appreciate that because
I am here to point out all the jargon and to listen closely and learn and go from there. But
that's my girl.
Yeah. I'm
all
right.
right.
Your girl.
Now we're going to follow up blue vervaine, an herb that I think probably few of our listeners have
heard
of.
Can I guess?
Sure.
Chamomile?
Yes. Chamomile is probably it. If I were to have you guess a Nervine, you probably would have guessed chamomile first if I had to guess. So chamomile, fantastic for the gut. We know that. Especially I've heard a lot of herbalists talk about that they think, and I don't know if I fully agree with this, but I've heard some herbalists say that chamomile really, really, really shines with the super young or the super old. It could be effective. It could be a wonderful herb for everybody in all walks of life. But like if you're in the pediatric or geriatric age group, then it is exceptionally wonderful medicine for you. So I thought that was kind of interesting. At the bare minimum, it's really gentle and it's really well tolerated. So I think in that regard, and actually I have to have a mom brag. Can I mom brag to you? I have, so when Jess has had a tummy ache before, I've given her chamomile tea. And now it's to a point, she's 6 years old. If she has a tummy ache, she specifically asks me for chamomile tea.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I know. And it's adorable. And like, we actually just a couple nights ago, she wasn't sleepy yet. So she also asked for chamomile tea before bed. And she requested that I get out 3 straws. And then all 3 of us sipped on it together. And it was so adorable.
God.
It's one of those things that like, you want to just soak up every minute of it because it's adorable.
Right.
But then part of me also wanted to do this and like take a picture for Instagram or whatever. I did not do that. I just enjoyed the moment. But it was so cute. The 3 of us sipping on chamomile tea. But I think it's a wonderful herb. It also is a bit of a prokinetic. So it can be really wonderful for people with IBS and SIBO because it is going to promote normal motility. It's also a nice antispasmodic, which means if you have that like cramping and muscular tension in your gut as one of the manifestations of your IBS, it can help alleviate that spasm and that cramp. I think my guess is that it's probably a little bit less good at doing that than ginger. I think ginger is like the best antispasmodic for the gut that I've seen. That's what I tend to recommend it for. But you could certainly combine the two. And ginger is not a nervine, but chamomile is. So again, you get that nourishing and that balancing effect for the nervous system, which is really nice. And interestingly, randomly, hold on. I pulled up this study today, actually, for a patient, and I was going to send this to her because we're working quite a bit on immune system imbalance, and she's got a low white blood cell count. But listen to this bad boy. This is a 2020 paper titled Effect of Chamomile on Chemotherapy-Induced Neutropenia in Pediatric Leukemia Patients, a randomized triple-blind placebo-controlled clinical trial. So neutropenia, for those of you who don't know, is when you have low neutrophils in the blood. So neutrophils are your most abundant type of white blood cell. And unfortunately, one of the common side effects of a lot of chemotherapy agents is that it will suppress your neutrophil count, and that suppresses your immunity, and then you get sick more, and the cancer could take hold a little bit more. So there's a lot of ongoing research using herbs to combat chemotherapy-induced neutropenia. And apparently, in this article, they had 40 patients, and they were giving a chamomile syrup or a placebo syrup for 30 days, and then they were measuring their white blood cell counts, and the conclusion was, quote, using chamomile syrup as a complementary therapy in children with leukemia could improve their immunity by minimizing chemotherapy-induced neutropenia, and it increased their white blood cell count. So how freaking cool is that?
Really
Did
cool.
not expect that one to come up. I know other herbs that have been studied for chemotherapy-induced neutropenia, but I did not know that chamomile was one of them until literally today. So this is a very apropos episode. I will add, I use chamomile. You could use chamomile in a couple of different ways, actually. If you think like it's a flower and it smells so nice. So I think it would be a crime against humanity to put this one in a capsule and take it as a capsule.
Right.
Like this one, it really excels as a tea. And I remember that this was one of the first herbal conferences I went to, and I laughed so hard. I remember these herbalists, and one of them was joking and saying that, you know, they had a patient or client who said, yeah, I drink chamomile tea. And then they sent them home with like some of the bulk loose herb instead of the crap in the tea bags, and it just rocked their world. So similarly, if you get chamomile tea from the grocery store aisle at your local Harris Teeter or Kroger or whatever, the crap that they grind up and put in the tea bags is not very fragrant, and it's probably not super medicinal anymore. But if you go on like Mountain Rose Herbs, or even like Frontier Co-op or Star West Botanicals on Amazon, there are these companies that sell bulk herbs, and you could get little dried chamomile flowers in a big 1 pound bag, and you put that in a teacup or a tea ball and make that into tea. World of difference. It's so fragrant and lovely, and I think it really is more medicinal, honestly. So with chamomile, don't cheap it out and get the crap at the grocery store. Don't go to Kroger. Go online and get it from a bulk herb retailer, and then it'll be a lot more medicinal and a lot more enjoyable. You can also use chamomile as a tincture. So I do use it as a tincture, and it smells wonderful also. And then you can get it as an essential oil, and you can apply the essential oil topically on your abdomen or use it in aromatherapy. I tend to use it mostly as a tea, though. I think that's where it really shines.
Right. And I think, again, it's nice to have things that you can sort of work into your routine versus just another capsule or another, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, again, some people could benefit from like maybe a tincture, but I think having something you could work in, you know, by just drinking it more as a part of your daily routine versus taking another supplement.
Yeah. Well, I think taking pills makes you feel like a sick person.
Right.
I mean, to some degree. If you take like a multivitamin, then that's fine. But if you're taking pills upon pills upon pills, that's going to make you feel like a sick person, for one. And two, it's like, realistically, the act of making tea takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's going to take at least a couple minutes, and you have to be a little patient, and you have to wait for it, and you're going to get the sensory experience of sipping it and smelling it. And it's kind of just like a really nice gesture that you're taking the time out of your day to prioritize your health and slow down and sip on a cup of tea. So I think the act of preparing tea can actually be medicinal in a way.
Right, right.
Yeah. And again, I think it's more effective and it's more enjoyable. But I will say this though, twofold. Two things come to mind. Again, sorry, this is all over the place per our usual, but a tincture, for those of you who don't know, is when you soak the herbs in alcohol, basically like vodka, and then you filter off the herbs after the fact. So it's like herb infused alcohol. So that's what a tincture is. Versus a tea where you're going to be putting the herbs in water and extracting out the good stuff, quote unquote, from the water. So some herbs do really well with a water extraction. Some herbs do really well with alcohol extraction. You know, some you could just grind up and put into capsules. It kind of boils down to like the chemistry of it. If you remember back to chemistry, like you would not put coconut oil in a glass of water and expect it to emulsify. Right? Not unless you put like a whole bunch of an emulsifier in it. Right. But if you mix coconut oil with olive oil, they can emulsify, they can blend things together. So similarly, some plants have things in them that are more water soluble or alcohol soluble or fat soluble, and you can extract those compounds in different ways.
Speaking of chemistry, isn't that called like hydrophobic or hydrophilic? Yeah. I'm having flashbacks to chemistry trauma. Yeah.
I liked chemistry. I just loathed organic chemistry.
Oh my gosh, organic chemistry was the pits.
I felt like it was a punishment, honestly. It was just a weed out class and it was just a punishment.
Right.
For sadists to laugh at us and laugh at our unfortunate time. Yeah. Yes. Oh, and another thing too is that one of the constituents, one of the things in chamomile that is medicinal is the volatile oils. And volatile means that it'll evaporate and it'll escape. So when you're steeping an herb like chamomile, you want to put a lid on it. So if you have some teacups or mugs come with a lid. So if I'm using one that has a lid, I'll just slap the lid on after I put the herbs in. If I don't have a cup with a lid, I'll usually put like a plate on top. Like we have some Corelle plates and I'll put a plate on top so that it seals in the goodness. But you actually want to trap those volatile oils. Otherwise, you're just going to make your house smell nice, but it's not going to do anything for your body beyond that. So
it's a good tip.
Put a lid on it.
I wrote that down. I wrote that down.
A lot of culinary spices are that way too. Yeah. Like if you're ever making a tea out of like thyme or rosemary or oregano, like a lot of them have volatile oils in them. Cardamom, fennel, a lot of the medicine is in the volatile oils for those, so you want to put a lid on it, ideally.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good little tidbit there. Put a lid on it.
Yeah, put a lid on it. All right, let's see. So next in order, this is also probably one that either people do not know about, or if they do, they're going to have an immediate assumption about that herb, and I'm going to try to change that assumption a little bit, and that's Damiana. Have you ever heard of Damiana or used it at all?
I cannot say I have heard of it or used it.
Okay, good, because that means I get to tell you the real deal, so I don't have to change the programming.
I have no preconceived notions.
Exactly, I love it. So Damiana is known as a libido stimulant more than it is known
sexy
as
time.
Yeah, sexy baby time. So Damiana, a lot of people think of it as increasing libido, and they think of it as like the libido herb. The way to think of it, though, that I've heard, this is the best way I've heard it explained, is it's a nervine for people who, when they are stressed, one of the manifestations of their stress is that they have no sex drive.
Ah, okay.
So again, it's like you can be stressed and have it manifest different ways. There are people who are stressed and they still have a sex drive. So that would not be the nervine for those people. But there are people, and honestly, like, to be TMI, like, I get this way. Like, if I'm stressed and overwhelmed, like, no, forget it.
I feel like I'm that way, too.
I think women more so get to be that way. At least that's my kind of impression of it, is like, women were like, no, but the testosterone-driven ones, they're like, yeah, anytime, anywhere. But yeah, for that reason, it is known as like a little bit more of a female herb, I think, in that regard. But yeah, it's not just a libido stimulant. It's helping with the stress response, and the manifestation of the stress is that you've lost your libido. So that's the way to think of Damiana. It's one of the few more warming nervines, which is kind of nice because as we go through, like chamomile is a little bit cooling, blue vervaine is cooling. A lot of these herbs as we go through, we'll see that they're at least somewhat cooling. So Damiana being a bit warming is nice for, again, like somebody with my constitution who tends to be cold. It's kind of nice to throw in some Damiana if you're working on nervines.
Nice.
Yeah, and apparently, I didn't know this until just the other day, it's apparently a carminative. And carminatives, think of things like cardamom and fennel, herbs that help break up and dispel gas from the GI tract. So, makes me wonder about some of our SIBO patients and IBS patients. Maybe they need some Damiana.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. The next one, I could go either way. I wonder if anybody will know this one, but hawthorn is also a nervine. This one is known as the cardiac herb. It's the heart herb. It's good for other things too. It is a nervine, so it's going to help with the nervous system and balance and nourish the nervous system. I've heard that it can be good for digestion. I don't know in what capacity though. But hawthorn is mostly thought of for all things cardiac. So whether it be hypertension or angina or arrhythmias or anything having to do with the heart or the cardiovascular system, again, as it pertains to stress. So the person who gets stressed and then they have high blood pressure, you might think of an herb like hawthorn as opposed to some of these other herbs.
Right.
And you could get this, you could get it as a tincture. I've never tasted it as a tea, so I cannot speak to the taste as a tea. But you can also, the company Herbalist and Alchemist makes this, because there's a hawthorn berry, they make this like paste or jam. I forget.
I'm going up, sorry.
Oh, I was kind of wondering what the noise was actually.
I sorry, I didn't mean, my back's kind of bothering me. I want to stand.
No worries.
Sorry, I didn't mean to distract you about hawthorn. Continue.
Not at all. I was just sharing that they make this like schmear. It's very thick. I would not say it's like a jelly or a jam. It's quite a bit thicker than that. But they make this like spreadable stuff. I think they might call it compote. But look it up. Herbalist and Alchemist is the brand. Hawthorn something or other. And it's quite tasty. They also make a blueberry one that's quite nice.
Yeah.
So that's one way that you can get it. It's kind of a little bit more of a food-based way of introducing this herb into your system. Because again, if you can eat the berries and have it be like a little treat or a spread that you put on toast, that's kind of a nice way to get this herb in. Then moving on, the next one, everybody knows this herb, hops. Hops is a big old nervine. And it's the world's favorite nervine, for that matter. I think this one trumps chamomile in popularity, if I had to guess. This one, it's quite cooling, so it's more appropriate for people who have a hotter temperament or a hotter, body. It's one of the herbs that's more sedating. So there's a lot of these herbs, they're all relaxing in some way, but few of them are overtly sedating. The ones that are more sedating and therefore are probably more appropriate to use in the evening when you're getting ready for bed if you want to be knocked out for a good night's sleep. The more sedating nervines are going to be hops, which we just mentioned, valerian, which we're going to get to, the stankiest herb on this list by far, and California poppy, which actually I forgot to take some notes on that, but poppy is also relatively sedating. So those are going to be the big three that are really sedating. And then passion flower is kind of borderline. I know I just heard an herbalist speak the other day say that it's kind of on the border between being relaxing versus sedating. I can't really speak to that because, again, I'm not an herbalist, folks. I'm training. But hops definitely can be sedating, and it can knock your ass out.
Well, and I think it's interesting because recently I tried hops water. I think it's called Hoplark is the brand. And they make...
An appealing name, but okay.
Yeah, they have, like, different blends. Some are caffeinated, so they mix it with tea, like a green tea or a white tea or something, and then they mix the hops in.
I'm picturing hops with caffeine. It's like drinking a beer and then having a coffee. I don't know if I'm behind this as an herbalist in training.
Well, and then the one I really like from them is a chamomile hops mixture.
Mm-hmm.
That one tastes really good. I mean, I like the taste. It again reminds you of beer, like an IPA, like a hoppy beer. So if you like the tastes of hops and beer, you probably like hop water. There's actually different brands too coming out. I don't know if it's becoming like a big thing, but
maybe. Well, it's probably in 2020 and 2021, a lot of people had some more alcoholic tendencies, shall I say?
Oh, yes.
And maybe now they're looking for alternatives so that they're not becoming alcoholics.
Right.
But yeah, this is my least favorite herb on this list.
Really?
I would rather take valerian. And valerian is stanky. But we talked about this with Thomas, right? I have a severe bitter deficiency.
Oh my
and
gosh.
hops is very bitter. And I've always detested the taste of beer. I cannot stand it. Bleh. I remember too, like when I had my daughter, I struggled a lot with breastfeeding. And one of the herbs that is a galactolog, aka it helps with the production of breast milk, hops is known to be a galactolog and help with the stimulation of breast milk production. And I kid you not, I drank one beer, gluten-free obviously. I drank one beer and was like chugging it down, and then I gave up. I was like, nope, I would rather find some other way to make breast milk. I cannot handle this. Cannot do it. And Mike was like, this will be great. We'll have a beer every night together. I was like, I can't do it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I'm too much of a baby for hops. But yeah, to each their own. My husband loves beer so much. And again, like, you don't want to be like a full-blown alcoholic and drink it all the time. So he's actually started making hop tea. I don't know if I shared this with you much, but he has actually gotten in the habit occasionally. He'll go to like a homebrew store or online. He will purchase hops that are sold, the type of hops that they would use in homebrewing beer. And he will basically make like a tea. Pardon me, hiccup. He will make a tea with that hops. And then he's kind of played with it quite a bit. He's sort of into food chemistry. But he'll cool it down in the fridge. And then he got one of those soda stream machines, like that carbonates it. And he'll carbonate it. And the one that I really approve of here is he will add inulin powder. Because he said the inulin powder gives it a better mouthfeel. And the texture of the mouthfeel is more close to beer when he puts inulin in it. But yeah, he's like kind of derived this little system where he'll make hop tea, but then he'll add inulin and he'll carbonate it. And it's sort of vaguely analogous to beer, and he'll have that every now and then as a treat.
Nice.
And I'm like, all right, bro, have you some inulin. You do you. Right. Yeah, exactly. And he'll put like a little bit of syrup in it to sweeten it, like the whatever syrup they use for beer. I don't know. Sorghum syrup or something. But yeah, so that's the story of hops. My least favorite on this whole list. Like I said, I would rather take stinky, stanky valerian, but to each their own. A lot of people love it. And it's very medicinal for sure. So I don't want to turn you off to hops. Then next up, so hops, obviously, you might as well enjoy the taste of the hops. If you like hops, you might as well just drink a beer or have it as like a hops tincture or something, or hop tea. The next one on the list is linden. And linden makes a really lovely tea. It doesn't impart a ton of flavor. It's a very neutral, pleasant flavor. It's a flower. But it is a very nice, gentle nervine, and it can help lower blood pressure. So like if somebody has like white coat hypertension, or if they get stressed and one of the manifestations is high blood pressure, linden can be nice. But honestly, I throw linden in a lot of the compounded tea blends that I'll make for patients, just because like it is nervine, it's lovely, it's well tolerated. I think it goes well with a lot of nervine blends.
Nice.
Yeah. Then coming up, Milky oat. So, all right. People are wondering, what is a milky oat? And is that gluten-free?
Well, I have a question.
Oat?
What about lavender?
I went out of the order. Thank you. You caught me.
Sorry,
Actually, you threw me off. Well, yeah, no, let's double back over to lavender really quick because I left that out of the notes for some reason. Lavender is wonderful. It makes a really nice tea or an oil, or there are products now where you could get like the lavender essential oil in the gel caps. I think it's called Lavella. I know. What is the one? There's one that I've used on and off for a while called Lavender SAP. I forget the brand now, but you could Google that product, or it's practically the exact same product as, I think it's just called Lavella or Lavender, and it's from Integrative Therapeutics. Makes a very similar gel capsule. That one, I actually have a little bit of personal experience with. So I did read something once upon a time that lavender might help neutralize hydrogen sulfide gas. I don't know. I haven't played with it much, but theoretically, maybe. At the very least, it should help de-stinkify you and your bowel movements and your gas if you have a lot of hydrogen sulfide production. So that could go a long way. But I had my husband take this for a little bit because he tends to be a high-strung anxiety type. And I'll just bring home pills and be like, here, take this. And he's so cooperative. Right. He's so cooperative. So he took it, these lavender gel caps for a week or two, but then he was like, they're kind of like, my burps smell like flowers. Yeah. It's weird. I don't like it. So he stopped taking it. And me being the cheapskate, I was like, well, I'm not going to waste it. So I figured I'll take it. And oddly enough, at the time, so one of my manifestations of stress, when I'm stressed, is my sleep goes down the toilet. I'll either have insomnia and I won't be able to fall asleep, or my sleep is very restless and I'll be tossing and turning. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was in a weird period of my life for like a year or more. I'm not sure how long, but there was a good stint in my life in recent years where I was sleeping kind of crappily and I was very restless. But one of the manifestations of that was that I was waking up to go to the bathroom every night. And that sounds really minor, but I have a bladder of steel. To kick it back to our pelvic floor PT episode, I have very good puckering strings.
Right.
As they would say in my mom's side of the family. But I'm a camel. I can hold my pee like you would not believe. And even when I was pregnant, I didn't have to pee in the middle of the night until literally like my last month of pregnancy. So I'm good in that department. And then all of a sudden for like a year or two of my life, I was getting up religiously every single night to go to the bathroom. And I was like, what's going on? Like, I know it's not my bladder and I know it's not my puckering strings. What is going on? And I figured it's just a manifestation of this lighter, restless sleep. And it's like, if I'm tossing and turning a lot and I kind of half wake up and then I have the perception of a little bit of pee in my bladder and then I'm like, oh, I have to pee. The first night I took these lavender gel caps, slept through the night. And ever since then, so I took it on and off again for maybe a year. I think it was during the pandemic. And I've since discontinued it, but I still sleep a lot more soundly. So that's like my little N equals one. Is that it did help promote more restful sleep and less tossing and turning. But yeah, it can be useful for stress and anxiety, probably gut kind of stuff as well. Do you have any experience using lavender?
Yeah, you turned me on to the gels. I've used them. I like them. For me, it's weird. Like, sometimes if I take, like, I don't know if it's just me getting used to them because, like, I also have taken lemon balm, and that seems better the longer I use it. But I think, like, when I first start taking some of the Nervines, I get, like, really, like, I feel almost drowsy the next morning. And I've had that a couple times with the lavender, but if I took it closer to dinner, it was fine. It was like if I took it right before bed, maybe on like a totally empty stomach, it affected me in a different way. I don't know. But I do like lavender. It does tend to help with curb any like anxiety I've found. I tend to run more on the anxious side. So I like lavender. I've used it as an essential oil too. Like I've diffused it.
Yep.
Which I really like and enjoy.
I'll show you a piece of my office decor, dear Amy. Hold on. I'm not sure if I might have showed you this before. Hold on. Ugh. I randomly have a vase in my office with a whole bunch of dried lavender just shoved in there for good measure. The vase, my grandfather actually made this. He had a ceramic studio like as a hobby, and he made this vase. Ooh, cool. And then the lavender, randomly, it was gifted to me when we went up to New York for a friend's wedding a couple years back. She wanted like lavender and like a light purple flower for her wedding, and her mom accidentally ordered dried lavender, and she was like, "No, this is not what I wanted." She was not a bridezilla, but that was like maybe her one shining moment of like, "No, Mom."
Well, so I feel like that might deserve. I don't know. I think I'm not a bridezilla, but I'd still probably be upset.
Yeah. Well, luckily, like they were able to rectify it. They figured it out quickly enough. But they had like bushels of this lavender, and randomly she just gave me a whole bunch of this dried lavender. So literally, I put it in my suitcase from because so this friend and I, we got married less than a week apart, and we were in each other's weddings.
Oh my god!
So we went to Ithaca for her wedding first, and then 5 days later we had our wedding in Buffalo. So like, and we were helping plan, prep the wedding the couple days before. So we were in Ithaca. She gives me these lavender flowers. I stuff them in my suitcase, go back to Buffalo, get married, get on a plane, and go to Oregon for our honeymoon. I traipse around Oregon with lavender in my suitcase randomly. And then we fly back to Arizona where we lived at the time. But like, these lavender flowers are very well traveled. But I just, every now and then when I remember that they're over there, I'll just pull off a couple pieces and kind of crush them up, and it's a lovely smell. And then the oil is really lovely too for aromatherapy. And you'd be surprised, like I'm not an essential oil expert by any stretch, but when in doubt, if you're trying to think like, oh, I have X ailment, which oil should I use for it? Just use lavender. Honestly, just use it. It's a really good kind of first stab because it's I swear it does everything the more you research it. So lavender, very skilled, but I think it shines in particular for anxiety, sleep, better sleep quality, certainly. And because it does have a lot of that like volatile oil content, I do think it could be really helpful for gut-based stuff as well. And then I'm going to kind of go like slightly out of order. So you brought up lemon balm. I want to cover that one first. I had it in with the M's because the name of it, the plant itself is called Melissa. So I was going to list it as Melissa, but let's go ahead and throw it in with the L's while we're on the L's.
Melissa, that seems like such a basic name.
Yeah, Melissa officinalis is our humble lemon balm. It is, first of all, it's a member of the mint family. So if you plant this one in your garden, it will take over your entire yard.
Oh my gosh.
Which is not a bad thing. It's just you have to know that that's going to happen. So keep it in a container unless you want a yard full of lemon balm. Side note, my parents have a yard full of lemon balm because they did not know this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But you'd mentioned that you had used lemon balm as well personally, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's in a product. I think it's called Zen Biome.
Yeah, it's the Microbiome Labs one, right?
Yeah, they sent me a bottle, so I decided to try it. And it has like a probiotic in it. I think it has L-theanine in it, and it has lemon balm in it. And I've taken it at night, and it does seem to help my sleep a little bit. Not that I like necessarily have crazy bad sleep to begin with, but seems to help with my sleep quality. It's relaxing to take in the evenings, I've found.
Yeah. And I think that this is another one where it's nice and relaxing. It's in the mint family, so it tends to be a bit cooling, if I remember correctly. But this is another one. Anything in the mint family is going to have a lot of volatile oils. So ideally you want to put a lid on it when you're making it as a tea. But it's a really talented plant. Again, Nervine, so it's relaxing. Lemon balm plus St. John's wort together is very effective for seasonal affective disorder, like the seasonal depression. Interestingly, when you use one or the other, they're not nearly as effective. But you get some synergy combining lemon balm with St. John's wort, which is pretty cool, specifically for seasonal affective disorder. Funny enough, I had like this whole little laundry list of printed out notes, so I'll just share a couple of things about our dear lemon balm. This was interesting. The presenter in this particular webinar that I saved the notes from mentioned that herbs that have a lot of aromatic oils or volatile oils are really good at targeting the limbic system. So if you think about the limbic system, it's that deep part of the subconscious lizard brain. It's the heart of where like sympathetic versus parasympathetic tone kind of really gets originated. And it's that like, it's all in that same ballpark of like the amygdala and like close to the memory centers, close to the brain stem. So it's that, how do we phrase it with Julia King? That the zebra part of your nervous system, where it's like, you don't confirm if the threat is real. You just know that there's a perceived threat, and then you drop your load, you poop, and then you run away, or you freeze up. But I think this could be a really medicinal plant for people who have more of that like gut-brain axis, parasympathetic, sympathetic kind of issue. I remember once, I don't think this has happened to me since, but I had a patient and we were talking about stress and using some of these herbs, and I was compounding her some herbs and tinctures. And for some reason, she was like, "What's your opinion of lemon balm?" She's like, "I don't know why, but like, I've been thinking about that herb lately and I've been kind of intrigued to try it." And I was like, I like it. Like, I like lemon balm, but I was like, honestly, I was like, if you have like a spooky cosmic feeling that you're getting drawn to lemon balm, why don't I go put lemon balm in the tinctures that I'm going to compound for you? She's like, yeah, okay. And this was an example of somebody, like, oftentimes I'll send people home with tinctures for like nervines or adaptogens or some combo. And oftentimes it takes a few weeks for them to really tell if it's moving the needle in the right direction. These are oftentimes not the fastest herbs to kick in my experience. But she was a person where like 3 days later, she was like, "These are amazing. Send me more."
Right.
And like, I think like it was during the pandemic, and like her kids were all quarantined and they had to get COVID tested, and her kids were home from school and she was working from home. And she was like, "I would have lost my mind normally, but these herbs are helping me keep my cool." She's like, "They're a miracle. Send me more." But funny enough, like she was very drawn to lemon balm for some reason, and she just had some intuition around that, which I thought was cool. But otherwise, it can help with white blood cell production in a way I do not know. These are notes from a webinar I took a while back. It has some antispasmodic abilities. So again, it can help you expel gas or alleviate cramping potentially. That's probably those aromatic oils that does that. It can help with insomnia. And there was a study that they shared that lemon balm plus valerian, which we'll get to momentarily, is equally effective as benzodiazepines. So things like, what's the one? Name a benzo, Amy. Oh my God. What's the one? Valium. Valium is the one I was thinking of. It's like wicked famous. Yeah, so it's equally effective for treating insomnia compared to a friggin' benzo, which is amazing. It's anxiolytic. It increases GABA in the brain. GABA is the neurotransmitter of your brain that inhibits everybody else and inhibits neurotransmission and says, "Hey, cool your jets." So that's generally a good thing. And it even seems to enhance acetylcholine activity. And they were sharing some research that it might be an herb that's helpful for Alzheimer's. So funny enough, not funny in like a haha way, but I mentioned that to my parents. And because, yeah, they have a yard full of the stuff. They might as well use it. Well,
Right.
my dad's mom passed away from Alzheimer's, and he is terrified of the thought of getting Alzheimer's someday when he's older.
Right.
And, you know, he's 67. He's not a spring chicken anymore.
Right.
Like, as soon as I told him this, he started going out in the yard and harvesting the lemon balm in their yard and making tea. And I'm just like, yes!
Oh my god.
Herbalist in the family. I'm so proud.
I love that.
Yeah. I'll have to ask
They're
if he's
gonna
still
start
doing
a
that.
business.
I
They're
know.
gonna
We
start
have
a lemon
a
balm
crop.
business.
We have a crop of lemon balm, let me tell you.
A cash crop.
Yeah. It's bananas, let me tell you.
Oh
But it's
my
nice, you know,
gosh.
it's nice. And that I'll probably get Jess into it at some point. I know I actually saw a recipe for lemon balm popsicles where like you make a lemon balm tea basically, and then you cool it down and you add like some honey and some flavoring, you know, I think maybe lemon.
Ooh.
Yeah, and you like make it into some summertime popsicles. I'm going to do that next year, I think.
That's so nice. I'd be excited to try that. Maybe when
Yeah.
we're together at
Yes.
some point in the future.
Actually, let me tell you, this is the degree of nerddom that I live in.
Oh my gosh.
Hold on. Okay, my darling, my sweet, my angel, my dewdrop.
Oh.
I bought this book.
Whoa.
The Healing Kitchen. Holly Belle Bueno? I don't know. But anyway, there are so many recipes in here that I want to try. Everything from teas, obviously, to oatmeals, to crackers, popcorn,
Oh my gosh.
salads, soups, nettle soup, nettle rice pudding. Anyway, I literally have an entire book of herbal-inspired recipes that I'm itching to try. And yes, you say the word.
And we'll try it together.
Yeah, and we'll try it together. I will say, my husband is not particularly adventurous with using herbs in food in this way, but I'll get there. I also I found a recipe in a conference. She called it antidepresso pesto,
Oh my gosh. I love
and it was so like normal pesto you'd use basil, right?
Mm-hmm.
In her recipe, she used a combination of basil and holy basil, aka Tulsi, which we'll talk about in the adaptogen episode. And I bought holy basil plants, grew them in my garden. They love the humidity in North Carolina. Oh my God, those things took off like you wouldn't believe. And I did harvest enough to make one batch of antidepresso pesto, and I was so pleased with myself.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, so we could even
I
make
love it.
antidepresso pesto.
I want to make antidepresso pesto.
Right?
I like that food pun.
If you guys want the recipe, I still have it somewhere in these books. Comment on the YouTube video in the comments if you want the recipe for antidepresso pesto or the recipe for the lemon balm popsicles, because I could dig that up and put that in the comments too. But I'm lazy and I'm not going to do it if you don't tell me to. So comment if you want it. Okay, moving on, my dear, because we have a handful more, believe it or not. We're only halfway through the alphabet.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Did you know this was going to be a long episode?
Oh my gosh.
I'll try.
Okay.
I'll keep it concise if I can.
Okay.
Okay. Milky oat. So we started to talk about this, and then you called me out for my bullshit because I went off the rails with the alphabetical order there. So now milky oat is the same plant that you're thinking of for oatmeal. It is the same exact plant. The difference. So there's a couple of different things. When they harvest the oats, like the seed of the plant, or the grain of the plant, you can harvest the oats, which we then make into oatmeal and oatmeal cookies and all that crap. And then the rest of the plant, you could harvest that, dry it, chop it up, and then that turns into what you call oat straw. And that's what I think we've talked about before for calcium. You can make that as a drink,
Right.
which is quite nice. Or when the oat plant first starts to... I'm not an herbalist, so I don't know the terminology. But like when it first starts to bloom or flower or
Right.
something, I don't know. At some point in the lifespan of this oat plant, it exudes a little bit of a milky stuff. I don't know. And if you harvest it at that point, that's what you make into milky oat tincture. And that's what we're talking about now. So you harvest it when it's got that like milky stuff. I don't even know what it is. So that's milky oat. It is gluten-free, FYI, so it would be oat straw. The issue with gluten comes from cross-contamination on the equipment when they're harvesting it, like if it's General Mills and they're harvesting for, Cheerios or whatever, and they happen to use the same equipment to harvest the wheat for their other cereal the day before. That's where the gluten thing comes in tricky with oats. But for herb retailers that are making this and they're harvesting for herbs, there would be no concern of that. And I've used milky oat and oat straw personally, and I'm a celiac, and I have had no issue from it. So for what it's worth. But this is a really nice, it's very nourishing and moistening. So it's a really nice, just like, it's nice to kind of build you back up. This one, the way I've heard it phrased that I loved is that this is the Nervine for people who are so fried they're crispy.
Right.
Like, they're overworked, underpaid, overstressed, sleeping like shit. They're frazzled. They're burning the candle at both ends. They can't keep up. They're scrambling. They're on the treadmill of life and it's going a tenth of a mile an hour faster than they're capable of running. These people are burnt to a freaking crisp. And if any of that resonated with you and you're burnt to a crisp and you're fried and you're crispy, milky oat tincture for you. And again, like you can pair it with a little bit of something else, but that's really what milky oat shines for. This is another one, especially because it's so nourishing. I think this is an herb that it's unlikely that you're going to have one dose of it and then be like, oh, this is great.
Right.
Versus you could feel that way from one dose of hops or one dose of chamomile or valerian. There are some nervines where you could feel the difference right away. Milky oat, in my opinion, it's going to take you a little bit more time to really feel the difference because it's trying to build you back up from burning the candle at both ends, crispy person stage. And that takes time. But give it time because it's a lovely herb. Hi guys, Nikki here. Amy started to feel really lousy towards the end of the episode, so I told her, don't even worry about it. We will do this as a part 1, part 2, because honestly, we had been talking about Nervines for about an hour, and we were only halfway through the alphabet anyway. So we're going to wrap it up here with milky oat, and we will pick it right back up in the M's of the alphabet in our next Nervine episode. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. And if you could do us the great, great favor of sharing this with anybody and everybody who you think would benefit from it, in Facebook groups, on social media, that would so help us spread the word and get this podcast out to people who really need it. And of course, if you are on Apple Podcasts, if you would be willing to write us a nice review on the podcast app, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you're on YouTube, my platform of choice, go ahead and comment down below, especially if you want those recipes, and like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you get notified when we release our next episode. So we will see you right back here on the next episode of the IBS Freedom Podcast. Take care and happy holidays.